What is up, sixth period? This is your boy, Mr. Uy. Um, I realize that it's been a while since I've seen you, but unfortunately, I'm at another meeting. I'm actually probably standing outside right now talking to the incoming seventh grade Webbies because I'm running the training outside. But other than that, here is definitely what you need to make sure that you're able to do today. Hopefully, if the sub has not passed out the notes and the practice for today, please make sure that you get those before we start. Um, all we have today is just a few things, so I just want to take a second to make sure that I explain it as well as possible in my own words so that you're not left to your own devices as you take this quest. So let's see what you have in store for yourself today. So the agenda for today is pretty straightforward. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to do some quest review, and that's the notes that you're taking initially. Realize that you are going to be turning in these notes at the end of the period because there's a part of the quest that's actually on there. So I want to make sure that you get full credit for that. If you haven't checked School Loop in a while, I updated in-class assignments in the gradebook, and they are up to date. So just make sure that you keep on plugging away on those in-class assignments so that you maximize your points. Afterwards, we are going to take the quest. So it's a multiple choice quest. There are 15 questions. You have a Scantron, and you will have enough time for sure during the period to finish and make sure that you maximize your score there. What I'm also going to be offering at the end of the quest is your portfolio work time. So anything digital you need to prioritize today because you are going to be turning in your Chromebooks this Thursday. So you're going to want to make sure that you turn in your portfolio a day early tomorrow, especially if you know that you're not going to have access to a computer to turn it in on Friday when it's due. So I'll talk more about that after you're done with the quest, and let's get started on your notes for today. Today is the final piece that we need to just review, a short 5-question review here of every single question that you could potentially see on this quest. I want to make sure that you guys have this in the front of your mind. Yes, you can use these notes on the quest. This is your relative cheat sheet here, so definitely take some great notes and you'll do just fine on the quest. All right. So first things first here, DCMAM is the most important thing that you need to remember when you're solving equations. So let's fill in what DCMAM stands for first. So quick recall, the D in DCMAM stands for distribute, the C stands for collect like terms, the M stands for move the variable, then we've got our add or subtract, and finally the multiplier divide. If you recall, we have done every type of problem that you see on this list. So just making sure that you have these things in order so that you can use them on the quest is massively important today. So take a second, fill in that list. What we should know about this list is that DCMAM can be used as a checklist to solve any type of problem that you can see. So whether it be in this quest at the end of the year for this year, or the tests or quizzes that I know that you're going to take at the beginning of next year in your Algebra 1 classes, DCMAM is super helpful. So take a second here, make sure that you fill in those blanks in your notes now, and go ahead and pause it here if you need some time to write this down. So our first example here starts at the easiest case scenario. So this is a one-step equation that we have to solve. Yes, there are going to be one-step equations here. So using our checklist, and again, you don't need to use the checklist if you don't need it. What we should see here is that the first thing that we're able to do is to add or subtract to get our variable by itself. So since I've got a -7, what I know that the inverse of that would be is adding 7. So bada bing, bada boom, I've got +7 on both sides of my equation. The 7 cancels on the left-hand side, and I'm left with x, which is exactly what I want. Bring down the equal sign, and now all I have to do is evaluate one simple addition problem. So -20 plus 7. Now again, if you need to use a calculator on the test, I highly suggest it, especially if you're still struggling with these negatives and positives here, because -20 plus 7 gives you one answer and one answer only, which is -13. So at the end of this process, bada bing, bada boom, we got x equals -13. One-step equations are definitely going to be on this quest. So make sure that you've got all the steps ready for you to be successful in these types of questions. Example number 2, go ahead and write this down. So I've got 3x minus 9 is equal to negative 30. And what we have here is our two-step equations. So these are the ones that we definitely see the most often. And just remember, we can use DCMAM to make sure that we're following the steps in order. So we don't have any distribution to do. We don't have any combining like terms to do. We don't have to move a variable around. But what we can see is that we've got some addition or subtraction to do. So my first step is to add 9 to both sides because I know the inverse of that minus 9 is a plus 9. Once I do this, the 9's cancel, bada bing, bada boom. Bring down that 3x, bring down the equal sign. Negative 30 plus 9, again, if you need to use a calculator, please, please, please do. But negative 30 plus 9 gives me a negative 21. And my last step here in my checklist is to either multiply or divide to get x by itself. And in this two-step equation, what I can see that I need to do is divide both sides by 3 to finalize my equation as x is equal to negative 21 divided by 3 gives me a negative 7. So one big thing I can definitely assure you is that you got to make sure that you are aware of the negatives and be careful when you're multiplying or dividing. So x equals negative 7 is the answer for my two-step equation here. Pause if you need to. All right, so example problem number 3 in our practice here is where things can get starting to get a little bit more tricky. So what we see that we need to make sure that we're able to do is distribute. So we know that there's distribution, and a dead giveaway for distribution is those parentheses. So whenever you see those parentheses, you know that we have to distribute. So our first step here in our distribution step is to draw these little lines. Remember, that line connecting the first number out front to everything in the parentheses represents multiplication. So that negative 2 distributed to that 2x gives me a negative 4x. And that negative 2 times that negative 8, negative times a negative, should give me a positive 16. Bring down the equal sign and bring down the 16. So there's my distribution step done. Now I go down the list to see if I've got anything else to do. So combining like terms, I don't see there's any like terms on either side to combine, so I don't need to do that. Next one, moving the variable. I see that I don't need to move the variable. There's only one there, so I don't need to do that. And now we've got our two-step equation process, which is adding or subtracting. So my next step here to solve for x is subtracting 16 from both sides. 16's cancel. Bring down the negative 4x. Bring down the equal sign. 16 minus 16 might give you a strange number here, but don't worry. 0 is a just fine number here. And my last step for DCMAM is to either multiply or divide. And in this case, I'm dividing by negative 4 to get rid of that negative 4 in front of the x. Negative 4's cancel, and I'm left with x is equal to 0 divided by anything, any number is just 0. So my final answer here is x is equal to 0. So this is our first distribution problem, and you'll definitely see these represented on the quest. So pause here if you need to catch up on the notes, and make sure that you are being very clear in your steps so that you maximize your score on this quest. All right, so example number 4, please write this down. So this is 3x minus 7x plus 5 is equal to negative 35. Just like every other problem that we've done, we can use DCMAM to make sure that we're following the steps and solving in order. So first thing, do we have distribution? No, there's no parentheses, so we do not have to distribute. However, what we should see is that there are terms to combine. So the terms that we can combine here on the same side of the equation is 3x and that negative 7x. Now remember, when things are on the same side of the equation, we just combine them how they are. So 3x minus 7x is going to give me a negative 4x. Bring down the plus 5, bring down the equal sign, and bring down the negative 35 because I haven't done anything to those things yet. Now following the process, do we have any moving the variable to do? No, we don't. X is on one side already. Now we have our two-step equation in which you already know the moral to the story. So my next step is to make sure that I get rid of that plus 5 by subtracting 5 on both sides. Bada bing, bada boom. 5's cancel. I bring down the negative 4x, bring down the equal sign. Negative 35 minus 5, and again, this is an important place to use a calculator if you're still unsure about these steps. And I have a negative 40. And my last step in the process is to divide by -4, which gives me my final answer here. X is equal to +10. And again, please be careful with the negatives. The negatives will trip you up if you're not super careful with them. So take a second, pause here so that you can catch up on the notes if you need to, and then we're on to our final problem. All right, so last example in our review requires you to just write this down. So 8x minus 5 is equal to 3x minus 25. And this, same as always, just like every other problem that we've done today, let's use DCMAM to our advantage. So distribution, definitely not something I need to do in this problem because I don't see any parentheses. Combining like terms, even though there's two x's that I see, I can't combine them because they're on different sides of the equal sign. But I can definitely move the variable to make sure that the x's end up on one side of the equation. So I'm going to choose 3x to move over to the other side. Now remember, whenever you're moving something from one side of the equal sign to the other, we have to use the inverse operation. So the opposite of positive 3x is a subtraction of 3x. So I'm going to subtract 3x to both sides. Now be careful. This is the #1 mistake I see people making. If you are moving the variable, the x's need to be on different sides of the equal sign. If you see them on the same side, that means that you're just combining them, just like example number 4. So once I carry out this step, the 3x's cancel because it moves over to the left-hand side to that 8x, and 8x minus 3x just gives me 5x. Bring down the -5, bring down the equal sign, bring down the -25, and I'm in the money here. So move the variable, checked off. Next, I have a two-step equation, so I know the steps here, so I either add or subtract. In this case, I am adding 5 to both sides to get rid of that 5. 5's cancel, bring down the 5x, bring down the equal sign, -25 plus 5, again, please be very careful of your negatives here. -25 plus 5 gives me a -20, and my last step in the process is to divide both sides by 5. All right, so the moral of the day, and this is the final fill in the blanks that you need to remember here, is to use DCMAM as a checklist for every solving problem. So if you feel confident not using the checklist, that's fine, but just make sure that you are able to use it, especially next year when you've got the summer to forget everything. Remember that you might have more than one step here, so just make sure that you do them in order so that you're as successful as possible. All right, so now that we've done some review and you've got your notes ready to use on the quest, now it's time to practice. So if you flip over your notes, what you're going to see is that there's a group part of the quest that you're required to do. So what I'm going to give you now in class is 20 minutes to work with the people around you and making sure that you show all your work. #1, box your answers and write as neat as possible because I will be grading the back. Now, once you're done, go ahead and make sure that everybody in your group has the appropriate work written down, and just sit tight until everyone is done, because then we can start the actual quest. So 20 minutes is on the clock. If you need more time, please talk to the sub or Miss Bryson or Mr. Phil, and they can come around and help you for sure. But 20 minutes should definitely be enough time for you to be successful on these 8 problems. So go ahead and flip over the problems on the back and make sure that you start working your way through them. All right, so if you're watching this slide, hopefully everyone in the room has finished the group part of the quest. If not, it's okay, you'll have time after the quest to finish. But now is the time in which you got to make sure that you're taking some individual time to take the quest. So Miss Bryson and Mr. Phil are going to help the sub to pass out your Scantrons now. Please make sure that you're aware of 2 things that are massively important. So there are 2 versions of the test. So please make sure that you mark the correct form number on your Scantron, otherwise it's going to get graded on a different answer key. So the form number is at the very top, so it either says version 1 or version 2. So please make sure that you bubble in at the very top of your Scantron which version you have. Also, just in case you forget to do that, make sure you write your name on the test. Yes, you can write on the test. So one of the biggest things that I want you guys to make sure that you have is enough time to do this successfully. Don't rush through this quest whatsoever. You can use a calculator if you need to. And the notes that we just took in class, are your cheat sheet. So please make sure that you take this time to really do well on this final assessment of the year. Most, if not all of you, are definitely going to do very well on this. So please use your resources to your advantage. If you have any questions, the substitute, Mr. Phil or Ms. Bryson, can definitely help you out. So I will say good luck, and you have as much time as you need to finish. Once you're done, I want you to make sure that you understand what you're responsible for. So pause here once everyone gets their Scantron, and then go ahead and hit play to make sure that everyone knows what's expected and what you're turning in at the end of the period. All right, so after you're done with the quest, there's going to be 3 baskets up front. So make sure one of them is for the Scantrons, the other one is for your test, and the third one is for the group portion of the quest. So please make sure you turn all 3 of those things in before you leave. And once you finish those 3 things, the rest of the period should be you on your Chromebook making sure that you finish anything digital that you know is due. So remember that the Math Year Portfolio is something that you should be working on and should be ready to turn in by Friday. So what I'm going to have on Classroom is an announcement in which you're adding an attachment in there already. Now, you can turn it in before Friday. However, if you turn it in before Friday, what I can give you is some feedback on it to see if you have any changes to make or if you're missing anything to maximize your points. So even if you turn it in, you can unsubmit it before Friday to get your full amount of credit for sure. So after you're done with the test, please take out your Chromebooks and make sure that you're working on that digital portfolio, especially if you still need to finish. Secondly, if there's anything else that's digital that you need to turn in, remember that Thursday is the last day, or today is going to be the last day that you have your Chromebooks. So please make sure that you've got everything turned in that you need to, so that when you turn in your Chromebooks, you don't have anything else for you to turn in without your Chromebook. So definitely take that into consideration and make sure that you're as productive as possible for the remainder of the period. So thank you for listening. Godspeed on the quest, and I think you guys are all going to do awesome on it. So please make sure that you've taken your notes and that you are as prepared as possible. I will see you tomorrow.